Markuann Smith, welcome to Miami.
Thank you.
You are more than welcome. You are one of the creators of Godfather of Harlem, and the show is doing super well. I mean, can we just talk about the inception of the show and how this came to be, just first off?
Oh, man. It goes back to 2000. And I used to go up to Lenox Terrace. You know, if your audience doesn't know, Lenox Terrace is a very prestigious area in Harlem. Back in the 60s, everybody used to live there, from politicians to actors to musicians. So I used to go up there in 2000 and visit my godmother. Her name is Markuann Johnson. And she used to tell me these magical stories about Harlem, how she used to walk out of a tenement building and smell fresh laundry hanging out the window, or walk past 125th Street, look up, see James Brown's name on a marquee.
Wow.
Walk past Sugar Ray Robinson's barbershop, peek inside, you might see Nat King Cole waiting to get a haircut, or even Jackie Wilson getting a haircut. But she also told me about, African Americans that migrated from the South trying to escape Bull Connor's water hoses and his dogs, and it was one of the most turbulent times in the 60s. And, for example, an African American can't purchase a hat at a store. They might say, put a shower cap on your head before you try this hat on. Or a husband that's been working all week and wants to treat his family to a steak dinner. Couldn't sit with the rest of the patrons. He had to take the food to go with his family. But she also used to tell me about her grandfather. His name was Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, and he was from Charleston, South Carolina. He was a Geechee. And how he came up here not to become a gangster. He actually wanted to become an attorney like Malcolm X. And when the bursar found out that Ellsworth Raymond Johnson was attached to a black man, they said, we don't give our financial aid to color folks. So he took the cards he was dealt, and he played it the best way that he could.
Which was?
He went to the street. He was the first African-American underboss, or boss, that sat down with the original Five family, which was Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, Maya Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Frank Costello. And
wait, so she's telling you all of these stories?
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
were you? Like in the living room?
No, we were in the living room.
Well, y'all drinking tea? Was she sipping whiskey?
Nah, I tell you something about Margaret, man. Margaret was really, God bless her, really spicy. Mm-hmm. Everybody on Lenox Avenue knew who Margaret Johnson was. She would come outside on her motorized scooter and her basket with her. She had a poodle that was mangy, and she would ride up and down the block. And I'll tell you a quick story. Margaret was outside one day, and someone tried to rob her, a mugger, and she took out a .357 and shot him in the ass and the elbow, and it was on the post. They called her Granny Oakley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was one of those individuals. She was very serious about her lineage, and she used to tell me these stories and these magical stories, and I made her a promise that I would go out there and get the real story of who her father was. Not the one you saw in Hoodlum or the Cotton Club or American Gangster. Bumpy Johnson didn't die in an electronics store in front of a bunch of TVs. He actually died in my character's arm, eating chicken and waffles. He had congestive heart failure.
Wow, so this is the story that you're bringing to fruition actually the third season is popping off in January.
January 15th, baby.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yep.
It's not easy to get shows greenlit, let alone get a third season.
Yeah.
And you're in your own show. What was that process like? You're playing Junie Bird, but we've had conversations before where you actually had to audition to be in your own, to be a part of your own project.
I remember when I first got my deal, I was in Burbank in the Disney offices, and the executive said to me, for you to star in your own show and get it greenlit, you might as well get struck by lightning twice. So I got struck by lightning twice, and I had to audition for my own show because you have to let individuals know that you have chops. I mean, I used to read lines and run lines with Forrest Whitaker every day for a summer.
But let's just not, talk about Forrest Whitaker like that's just regular.
Well, that's you know what? That's like my older brother.
First of all, I want to go back to that because when you were thinking about the character of Bumpy Johnson, was he one of the first people that you thought of? Hey, this is the person that needs to play this role.
No, actually not. When I got the opportunity and I met my partner Jim Atchison, Jim called me one day and said, how would you feel about Forrest Whitaker playing Bumpy Johnson? And I was like, huh? I hung up the phone. Because we're from an area where, people sell you the Triborough Bridge. I got the Brooklyn Bridge for sale. I have a sheik in Dubai with $50 million. And he called me back. He said, no, I'm serious because Joanne, who's my big sister, that's his wife, Joanne Colano, shout out, She manages Forrest. So Forrest didn't intend to play Bumpy at first. He just wanted to produce it. You know, as an actor, you want to see what jumps out of the pages before you become part of that role. You know, so after reading a lot of spec scripts that was sent to me from WMA, CAA, you know, Gersh, all the...
For those people that aren't up on the lingo, these are...
agencies.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm reading different scripts, and one day I just happened to be on IMDb, and you know, I love gangster movies, so I said, you know, let me look and see. And I looked at Hoodlum, and I saw Chris Brancato and Paul Eckstein. And then I called my partner, Jim Atchison. I said, do you know Chris Brancato? He said, who, the writer? I was like, yeah, the writer. Oh, he lives across the street from me. Joanne cooks an Italian dish for him every Sunday, him and his family. It was like the stars aligned. So I already had Forrest, and then Chris came on board. But Chris couldn't commit at the time because he was writing a pilot called Las Sirenas that was on CBS. And he was also doing the El Chapo piece. For your audience, Chris Brancato created Narcos.
Okay.
So Chris couldn't commit. He said, you know, I did Bumpy already. We did that with Hoodlum. So I said, what about Paul Eckstein? So Paul flew down to New York, met me. He said, hell yeah, I want to do it.
So Chris passed?
Chris passed
wow.
it first. He said, oh, hell yeah, I want to do it with you. So me and Paul, we developed it for like the 6 months. And Chris finally came on and said, you know, I want to be part of it.
And then Forrest Whitaker eventually...
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker was already in it. But it was a struggle. I mean, a lot of people say they want success, but they're not ready to eat ramen noodles or tuna fish or sleep on somebody's floor. Or say, you know, okay, you got to hook up with a buddy pass because I got a meeting at Netflix on Monday morning and I got to get out of New York on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So I tell people all the time, don't look at my breakthrough, look what I've been through. Don't look at the glory, listen to my story.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of your story because, you know, I've been there through certain moments.
Yep, absolutely.
And used to work at BET, and I remember when you had this vision, and I'm so glad that it's coming to life now, and it's larger than life. I mean, one of my favorite actors, Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
I mean, can
John,
we talk about how, like, you know...
Giancarlo is an amazing individual, man. I call him Uncle John, you know, because... as an actor, when you're playing in the sandbox with these guys know they could spot fear, they could smell blood, you know. And Giancarlo is one of those actors. He's like a southpaw. You think he's going left and he goes right, and he works all the time.
He's so versatile.
Yeah, he works all the time.
Yeah.
I love Giancarlo and the rest of the cast. You know, Vincent D'Onofrio, Forrest, of course, Chaz Palminteri. You know, we have some wonderful individuals. Like, we have a wonderful, diverse team.
So now that all of this is happening, I just want to educate our audience on if they're thinking about trying to greenlight a film, or if they're writing a script and they don't know where to start or where to begin. Can you give them some, I guess, you know, words of advice?
You know, I tell people all the time, you know, before you enter into any type of business, regardless if it's the film business, the music business, you know, a lawyer, a doctor, learn about your craft. You know, even as an actor, it's not just about memorizing lines, you know. Learn about the different lenses that they use. If you're going to use a 25, if you're going to use a 50, how to bring your emotion up, bring your emotion down. You know, go to Barnes & Nobles, get producing for dummies or writing for dummies, screenwriting for dummies, and learn that. Because when the opportunity comes, you have to be ready.
I think also authenticity is important.
Of course.
You know, I think that because your story is organic to you, and it's special for you. So I think that a lot of these people that want to be creative it needs to come from somewhere internally.
And also, you know, I like what you just mentioned, authenticity, because when we did Godfather Harlem, of course I wasn't born in the 60s, so I made sure I brought in Professor James Small. And Professor James Small is a very, very popular in the African community as knowing the history of our culture. And he was on set every day, so we can get the story right. And, you know, that's really important in being in a writer's room, about sharing your culture with other writers that may not be part of your culture. And that's one of the things that I did. I made sure that I went to the Schomburg Museum. I went into the microfilm. I went into all the old articles that I could find on Bumpy Johnson and created a big palette, a gumbo, to put in the room so everyone could have a piece of it.
What I think is interesting about this story is how you see the dynamic between a Malcolm X and a Bumpy Johnson and how they work together. A lot of the struggles in the black community where you want to do good, but the man is not allowing you, and how they had to work together.
But listen, you know what? It's the collision of civil rights in the underworld. That's the That's the bottom line. You know, it's when you look at Tony Soprano, you like Tony Soprano. Why? Because of the dynamics. You never saw the dynamics of a mobster and his therapist, right? When you look at Walter White, you're like, wow, he's a chemistry teacher that is
From Breaking Bad, yeah.
suffering from an illness, right? But he's forced to sell meth so he could pay for his illness, for his treatment. So this is what we wanted to show. The focal point was showing a gangster that's really trying to transition, because you saw Hoodlum, but that was the Harlem Renaissance. That was pre-Bumpy. Now you're showing post-Bumpy, an older man coming home from Alcatraz after doing 13 years in jail in 1963 and getting acclimated to how the world has changed. Because if you think about it, the Harlem riots is what? That's Ferguson all over again, right? Malcolm X, not Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, that's Colin Kaepernick. So it's the juxtaposition of what's happening in history right now.
Now, season 3, you just showed me the trailer.
Yeah.
It's not out just yet, but can we talk about what we can expect for season 3? And I noticed Swiss Beats is doing the music, which is an interesting dynamic with the old and the new, and how is a mishmash of. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I brought Swiss in the first season, because I'm the youngest African American executive producer on the team, so they might not be really acclimated to the music that we listen to, and I wanted to make sure that we brought a producer in that knew the culture, that had New York in him, and that was Swiss. Big a shout out to Swiss and Grady and Mo. And Swiss is an amazing person, man. He'll have like 4 or 5 studio sessions open, and he'll have Rick Ross in one. He'll have G Herbo on another, 21 Savage or whatever, and everybody's looking at the screens, putting words to the picture. So that was very important, because we wanted to get every dynamic of demographic that was out there, whether it was old or young. I want your aunt, uncle, your grandmother, grandfather to say, hey, I remember that, baby, but I want you to look at it and say, yo, this is really dope, from the music and the culture just combining.
And even the people that you chose, I remember I believe it was the first season, Jasmine Sullivan.
Oh, yeah.
She was it was just a perfect
Jasmine
fit for
Sullivan,
her.
Lucky Day, Aloe Black.
Yes. Featuring these artists. I love that.
But if you really look at the formula, why did we all like New York Undercover? Because of Natalie's, right? Because you heard the music. You heard artists. You were in tune with the artists and the music. So we wanted to make sure that you were able to grab the music, the culture. You could hear Martha and the Vandellas, but then you could hear Rick Ross. You could hear Sam Cooke, but then you could say, you know what, I like H.E.R. So that's what we wanted to do, and I think we did an amazing job trying to complete the task.
Well, I'm so proud of you. Season 3 is coming out when again?
January 15th,
January
baby.
15th. You guys got to come back down so we can do something for that, make it big for our audience.
I would love to.
Give them like a special exclusive screening for the season 3 of Godfather of Harlem. Markuann Smith, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me in Miami for Art Basel.
Thank you, fellow Scorpio.
Yes, fellow Scorpio in the building, a.k.a. Junie Bird. That's the role that you play, so make sure that when you're watching Godfather of Harlem that you see him in that, and also the creator of Godfather of Harlem. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me.
Of course.